something interesting about Sapere's approach, which is very old and of course very new. Uh, Old, by that I mean we know that the composers that I mentioned before, and many others of course, but let's take as an example Handel, a man who was busy writing operas but at the same time teaching people how to sing. The approach of the composer for the voice from the point of view of a complete cognizance of the mechanism of singing, and therefore the setting of certain vowels on certain notes to get certain colors and effects, sometimes to aid the singer, sometimes to make his job even more difficult, but then thrilling when he surpasses these difficulties. I know that in the case of Sapere, he doesn't teach singing, but he has sat in on hundreds of hours of singing classes and listened to how the voice is actually formed, followed the voice of particular keeping, who sings the wonderful baritone music in this piece, followed it from its beginnings and watched how the support came in and the placement came in, and bit by bit all these elements. And so the music is written in a way which is eminently singable. I remember that chorus in South Africa saying, my God, it's so simple to sing this music. In Requiem, what we hear is the postmodern style, just as in the art, plastic arts and in architecture, you get quotes from the classics that are reinterpreted in the modern way. And in other postmodern operas, comes to mind the one that was done at the Met, in which there are actually quotes of Mozart's music and so forth. In Requiem, what Sapere does is instead of quoting somebody, you have the impression that the perfume of the piece has wafted through the room. Clearly, your mind is brought to the piece, but it is not, you're not being glued to an actual quote. The whole point is that in the reassumation of the past, instead of the rejection of the past, of course, I should have said that the dissonant music of the middle of the 20th century is a rejection of the past. And what the postmodern school is about is a re-acceptance of the past and in incorporating it into current life and current style. And therefore, it's interesting to see how the young men do it. What Sapere does is he looks at 19th century music. There's a fugue that might have been written in the 18th century in this piece. He certainly doesn't despise the music that comes out of Hollywood, as indeed no serious musician does anymore of the younger generation, or off of the Broadway stage. Or the reassumation of earlier music has to be total. You can't be snobbish and eliminate part of it. It has to be complete. And that's what we hear in Requiem. As well as that, we hear an interest and a knowledge and an enriching of the entire musical fabric with the use of certain esoteric devices that were used and known and used by most of the great composers of the remote past, certainly Gabrieli, certainly Monteverde, certainly Handel, certainly Bach, numerology, alchemy, all these values. If you listen, there are places, I won't give away the game, but if you just remember that number 1 always has to do with God, as does 3, and that 2 is the number of Satan, or of argument, or of discord, then you'll hear the 1s, 2s, and 3s coming through the piece all the time. The last movement, the In Paradiso, is in the time signature of 7. Well, that reminds us that 7 is 3 and 4, and that has to do with God and earth, 4 being the number of earth. And as the whole thing goes up toward the starry throne, and yet there is the whole, it's based on these earth numbers, which at the same time I find so interesting because an odd time signature usually tears everything to pieces. But in the case of this movement, I find that the 7 pushes you forward, almost as like a force, pushing you forward against the terror and fear at approaching the starry throne, which you hear very much. The terror comes out of the orchestra and out of the chorus, and yet that 7 keeps urging you forward, and you can't move back from it. And then, of course, at the end, the blaze of light and the accompanying terror. It's a mistake to try to ascribe too much programism to this music, but certainly the style of the music is a kind of an opera in the sense that a drama is being given, but it's the drama of a soul with its body, with God, with eternity, with death. It's the eternal drama. The treatment is extremely operatic, while at the same time not vulgarizing these enormous issues by putting them on the stage as some kind of a terrible soap opera. Instead, they're given the superhuman lyricism of Italian opera. One is reminded very much of The Messiah, in which Handel wrote on the title page of the libretto, Maiora canamos. He takes all of the Italian operatic cliches, and he says at the beginning of this piece, now we will sing of more important things. Now that seems to me what Sapere has done, is taken the various operatic gestures of the 19th and 20th century, but puts them to the use of greater things. Very, very similar to what Giuseppe Verdi does in the Requiem. He takes all of the operatic idiom, but it somehow is placed on a scale and on a level which is way beyond any opera spiritual.